The bell above the door of Westlake Coffee chimed, a cheerful, oblivious sound. I'd just stepped inside, craving a caffeine hit before a morning I knew would be packed with code and client calls. And then I saw her. Olivia Reed. Standing at the counter, a slight smile playing on her lips as she spoke to the barista, the curve of her neck exposed as she tilted her head. 8 years. 8 years since I'd last seen that smile. That hair, a cascade of auburn waves, those bright, impossibly green eyes. 8 years since I died. My breath hitched. The murmur of conversations around me, the clatter of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, it all dissolved into a dull, distant roar. My vision tunneled, focusing solely on her. It was her, unmistakably. The way her fingers drummed lightly on the polished wood of the counter, a nervous habit I remembered all too well. The tiny dimple that appeared beside her mouth when her smile widened. Time hadn't touched her, or perhaps, in this new life, time had simply been kinder. A wave of nausea, sharp and sudden, washed over me. My hand, clumsy and unresponsive, fumbled for the door handle behind me. I had to get out. Now. I lurched backward, my shoulder colliding with someone. A startled gasp. A muttered apology from a woman I barely registered. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I could hardly draw a breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. I'd been given a reprieve, a clean slate. All my memories of the before, inexplicably intact. And now, here she was, the ghost of my past, the architect of my unmaking, standing there as if no time had passed at all, as if she hadn't ripped my world apart. The images slammed into me then, unbidden, visceral. Our first meeting at that raucous college party, the air thick with cheap beer and hopeful energy. Her laughter, a melody that had once been my favorite song. Her hand in mine, a perfect fit. Promises whispered in the dark, declarations of forever that had felt so real, so unbreakable. Then the slow, insidious creep of doubt. Her lies, small at first, then growing, coiling around me like a vice. The betrayal, sharp and brutal, that had hollowed me out. My reflection in the mirror, a stranger with haunted eyes. The slide into a darkness so profound I couldn't see a way out. And then, the final, crushing blow, her ultimate betrayal, the one that had pushed me over the edge into the silence of oblivion at 28. I stumbled out of the coffee shop, gulping in the cool Seattle air. My lungs burned. I leaned against the brick wall, my legs trembling. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat, and glanced at the date. October 12th, 2023. 8 years. It had been 2015 when my first life had sputtered to its miserable end. This new timeline, this second chance, had started when I was 18, a bewildered teenager waking up in my childhood bed with memories of a future I hadn't yet lived, a future I had already died in. I'd made different choices this time around, stayed in computer science, never transferred, never moved into that cramped apartment with her, never met Olivia Reed at that fateful party. My life was good, stable, successful even. Until now. Through the large plate glass window, I watched her. She was laughing now, a genuine, unrestrained laugh, as the barista handed her a steaming cup. That laugh. It used to make my chest ache with a fierce, protective love. Now it just sent a shiver of remembered pain down my spine. She looked exactly as I remembered. A vibrant splash of color in a muted world. But the magnetic pull, the irresistible force that had once drawn me to her, was gone. In its place was only the hollow echo of agony and a cold, hard knot of resolve. This time, I would walk away. This time I would save myself. The drive to my apartment in Belltown was a blur of clenched fists and shallow breaths. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her car, a phantom tailing me through the city streets. My hands, usually steady whether I was tapping out lines of code or gripping a climbing hold, trembled on the steering wheel. Seeing her, so unexpectedly, had ripped open a wound I'd convinced myself had healed, or at least scarred over enough not to ache. I punched the code for the underground garage, the familiar beep a small anchor in the storm raging inside me. My apartment, a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound, was a testament to the life I'd built here, in this second iteration. A life without her. A life where I'd made choices for myself, not for her. I dropped my keys on the granite countertop, the clatter loud in the sudden silence. "It's not her," I muttered, pacing the length of my living room, the city lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled. Not my Olivia, just a version of her. Someone who looks like her, sounds like her, but isn't the one who... I couldn't finish the thought, but I knew, deep down, it was a lie I was trying to sell myself. The core of a person, their essence, their capacity for cruelty or kindness. Did that really change with the timeline? I doubted it. The Olivia I knew had been a master of disguise, a chameleon. This one, laughing so freely in the coffee shop, was likely no different. My phone buzzed on the counter. Marcus, my business partner. I let it ring a few times, trying to gather myself before swiping to answer. "Ethan, man, you sound like you've seen a ghost," Marcus said, his voice booming through the speaker. "Something like that," I managed, trying for a casual tone. We'd built Code Weaver Solutions from the ground up, a software development company that was finally starting to make some serious waves. In my previous life, I'd been a college dropout, my potential fizzling out as I poured all my energy into Olivia's dreams, her needs, her bottomless pit of emotional demands. This company, this success, it was mine, ours. "You okay? You're not still hung up on that disastrous Tinder date from last week, are you?" he joked. I forced a weak laugh. "No, not that, just a weird morning." "Well, try to unweird it. Big pitch with Innovatech tomorrow, remember? They want to see the new security protocols in action. This could be huge for us, Ethan." Innovatech. Right. The meeting I should be prepping for. But my mind was a tangled mess of past and present, of Olivia's smile and the hollow ache in my chest. Yeah, I'm on it," I said, trying to sound focused. "Just needed to clear my head. I'll be ready." "All right, man. Don't let whatever it is throw you off. We need your A-game." "Got it." I ended the call, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me again. My A-game. How could I bring my A-game when the architect of my downfall was just a few miles away? A walking, breathing reminder of everything I'd lost, everything I'd run from. I walked over to my desk, the sleek wood cool beneath my fingers. I pulled open the bottom drawer and retrieved it. A simple, leather-bound journal. My lifeline in the early days of this second chance. After I'd woken up at 18, gasping for breath, the phantom taste of pills and whiskey still on my tongue, the memories of my other life, Olivia's life with me, had been overwhelmingly vivid. I'd started writing it all down, a desperate attempt to make sense of the impossible, to document the nightmare so I wouldn't forget, so I wouldn't repeat it. I flipped through the pages, my own handwriting a stark record of a love that had turned toxic. Her laughter, her tears, her accusations, her betrayals. It was all there, right up to the end. My suicide note, a pathetic, rambling mess of self-blame and despair. A note no one in this timeline, thankfully, had ever seen. The pages of the journal crackled as I turned them, the ink slightly faded but the words still screaming off the page. College, 2011, previous life. I was a sophomore, full of coding dreams and the quiet confidence of someone who knew their path. Computer science was my world. Logical, structured, predictable. Then Olivia Reed exploded into it like a supernova at a frat party I'd almost skipped. The music was too loud, the air too thick with the smell of stale beer and cheap perfume. But then I saw her across the crowded room. She wasn't dancing like the others, all flailing limbs and forced smiles. She was leaning against a wall, a sketchbook in her hand, observing everyone with an intensity that was both unnerving and utterly captivating. Her auburn hair was a wild halo around her face, and when our eyes met, something jolted through me. A spark. No, more than a spark. A full-blown electrical current. Her confidence was a magnet, her artistic spirit a vibrant contrast to my world of algorithms and binary code. I was, from that first moment, utterly hooked. Our early dates were a whirlwind. She pulled me into her orbit, a world of late-night poetry readings in dimly lit cafes, avant-garde art galleries where she'd explain the meaning behind abstract splashes of paint with a passion that made my chest ache, and long walks through the city, her hand tucked into mine. She was teaching me to see the world differently, to feel things I hadn't known existed. My carefully constructed life, my predictable routines, they all started to feel a little bland in comparison to the technicolor chaos she brought. I was captivated, not just by her beauty, but by the way her mind worked, the way she seemed to feel everything so deeply. One night, after a particularly moving indie film, we ended up back at my dorm, sprawled on the floor, talking until the first hints of dawn painted the sky. That was when the walls truly came down. We talked about everything, our wildest dreams, our deepest fears, the futures we envisioned. Olivia, her voice soft and laced with a vulnerability I hadn't seen before, told me about her childhood. An alcoholic mother who veered between suffocating affection and cruel neglect. A father who'd walked out when she was 6, leaving a gaping hole she'd been trying to fill ever since. Her fear of abandonment, she confessed, was a constant, gnawing presence in her life. It explained so much, her intensity, her need for constant reassurance, the way she sometimes clung to me as if I were a lifeline. "I'll never leave you," I'd whispered, my voice thick with emotion, the words feeling like the truest I'd ever spoken. "You're my forever, Olivia." Tears welled in her green eyes, spilling onto her cheeks. She'd thrown her arms around me, burying her face in my neck, her body trembling. "Promise me, Ethan. Promise you won't." And I had, over and over. In that moment, holding her, feeling her raw need, I felt essential, important. It was a heady feeling, intoxicating and dangerous. It was the first time I'd ever felt truly, deeply needed by someone, and I'd mistaken that need for love. Back in the present, in my silent Seattle apartment, the memory was so vivid I could almost feel the ghost of her arms around my neck. I slammed the journal shut with a sharp snap. The sound echoed in the stillness. "Not this time," I said aloud, my voice raspy. "Never again." I turned to my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my face. My fingers, almost of their own accord, typed her name into a social media search bar. Olivia Reed. Her professional photography page popped up almost instantly. A curated collection of stunning images, landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces. In this timeline, she'd done it. She'd become the successful artist she'd always talked about, the one she'd always aspired to be, and a cold dread settled in my stomach. Because if she was this successful, this visible, our paths were bound to cross again. I just knew it. The journal lay open again, a chronicle of my past self's unraveling. 6 months into the relationship, things were still intense, passionate. I was head over heels, convinced Olivia was the one. Then the first real test came. I'd landed a dream internship offer, a summer position at a cutting-edge tech company in Seattle, the kind of opportunity that could launch a career. I was ecstatic, already picturing myself coding groundbreaking software, learning from the best. When I told Olivia, her reaction wasn't what I expected. Her face crumpled. Tears welled in those expressive green eyes. "Seattle?" she'd whispered, her voice trembling. "But that's so far. Long distance. Ethan, it'll kill us. I can't do it. I can't lose you." She'd clung to me, sobbing, painting a bleak picture of lonely nights and fading connections. Her fear of abandonment, that raw wound she'd shown me, was on full display. And it worked. I declined the internship. My academic advisor, Professor Davies, a man whose opinion I deeply respected, had called me into his office. "Ethan," he'd said, his brow furrowed with concern, "this is a significant opportunity. Are you sure you're thinking this through?" I'd nodded, resolute. "Olivia needs me here," I'd explained, as if that were the most logical reason in the world. "She's my priority." He'd sighed, a look of disappointment flickering in his eyes. "Love is important, son, but don't let it derail your future." My parents had been even less understanding. "You're throwing away a golden chance for a girl you've known for 6 months?" my dad had boomed over the phone. "Some opportunities only come once in a lifetime, Ethan." I'd said the same words back to him. Exactly. And Olivia is that opportunity. I truly believed it then. I believed our love was the epic, once-in-a-lifetime kind. Olivia was, of course, ecstatic. "Oh, Ethan, I knew you wouldn't leave me," she'd cried, showering me with kisses, her relief palpable. "You're the only one who's ever truly put me first." And in her happiness, in the reaffirmation of her love, I found my validation. That small, niggling voice in the back of my mind, the one that whispered I might be making a monumental mistake, I silenced it. Her joy was my reward. But the compromises didn't end there. My academic performance, once stellar, began to slide. Olivia's art shows, her poetry slams, her emotional crises, they all took precedence. Late nights comforting her after a perceived slight from a classmate, or helping her stretch canvases, or just listening for hours as she dissected her anxieties, ate into my study time. My roommate, a pragmatic engineering student named Ben, was the first to call me out. "Dude, you're becoming Olivia's shadow," he'd said one evening, watching me cancel plans with our study group yet again because Olivia was having a bad day. "When was the last time you did something for yourself? Something you wanted to do?" His words stung, sparking our first real argument about her, about the relationship. I'd defended her fiercely, accusing him of not understanding the depth of our connection. He'd just shaken his head. "I understand you're ditching your future, man." In my present-day apartment, the city lights of Seattle, the city I'd once given up for her, twinkled outside my window. Ironic. I opened a new coding project on my laptop, needing the familiar comfort of logic and structure. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. "Olivia Reed viewed your profile." My stomach twisted into a tight, painful knot. She knew I was here. She knew. The past wasn't just a memory anymore. It was actively seeking me out. The journal entries from the next period of my first life were harder to read. The descent had been subtle at first, then alarmingly quick. 1 year in. That's when I first noticed her growing closeness with Julian Vance, her charismatic older art professor. He was everything I wasn't. Sophisticated, worldly, a published poet with a reputation for nurturing special talents. Olivia started spending more and more time with him, discussing her portfolio. getting feedback on her new series. When I voiced my discomfort, a small, hesitant question about the late hours and the intensity of their connection, she'd flown off the handle. "Are you serious, Ethan? You're going to be that guy? The controlling, insecure boyfriend? I thought you were different. I thought you trusted me." Her accusations were swift and sharp, deflecting any scrutiny from her actions and painting me as the problem. Our first major fight erupted a week later. I'd seen her phone light up with a text message while she was in the shower. Julian's name. I knew I shouldn't have, but a cold dread had already taken root in my gut. I picked it up. The messages weren't overtly sexual, but they were intimate, full of inside jokes and a level of familiarity that went far beyond a student-teacher relationship. My hands were shaking when she came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming. When I confronted her, holding up the phone like an indictment, her face transformed. The soft vulnerability vanished, replaced by a cold fury. "You went through my phone? You spied on me?" she'd shrieked. "How dare you? You have no right!" She didn't deny the inappropriate nature of the texts, didn't try to explain them. Instead, she turned it all back on me. My lack of trust, my jealousy, my possessiveness. She'd packed a bag and stormed out, leaving me standing in the wreckage of our once perfect love, my head spinning. 3 days of agonizing silence followed. I barely ate, barely slept. I replayed the fight, her words over and over, starting to believe her. Maybe I was being controlling. Maybe I was insecure. Then she returned. Mascara streaked down her face, her eyes red-rimmed. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I'm broken. I do this. I push away the people who love me the most. It's my mother, my father. I'm so scared of being hurt again that I sabotage everything good. Please, please don't give up on me. I'll change, I promise." And like a fool, I'd believed her. I'd held her, smoothed her hair, whispered reassurances. Her vulnerability was her most potent weapon, and I was utterly defenseless against it. To prove my commitment, to give her the security she claimed she needed, I made another catastrophic decision. I transferred out of computer science into a less demanding general arts program. More time for her, I reasoned. More time to support her, to be there for her. My parents were devastated. "An arts degree? Ethan, what are you thinking?" My mother had cried over the phone. I'd defended Olivia, defended my choices. "She needs me, Mom, and I love her. This is what love is, sacrifice." They didn't understand. No one did. The present-day Ethan, the one who had clawed his way back to a life of his own making, felt a wave of pity for that lost, naive boy. My laptop chimed. An email. Unknown sender. My heart lurched. I clicked it open, and subject, "Westlake Coffee? Ethan, I think I saw you today at Westlake Coffee. Tall, dark hair, looked a little lost? It's probably a long shot, but if that was you, it's been so long. I'd love to know how you're doing. Olivia Reed." My finger hovered over the delete button. This was it. The first direct contact. The first test. Delete. Just delete it and walk away. My past self screamed at me from the pages of the journal. Don't do it. Don't let her back in. But a morbid curiosity, a twisted need to see if she'd changed, to see if I had changed enough to withstand her, held my finger captive. I spent the entire night staring at Olivia's email, the cursor blinking mockingly on the screen. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the Olivia from the coffee shop, smiling and vibrant, and the Olivia from my past, her eyes flashing with anger or brimming with calculated tears. Part of me, the rational, scarred part, knew I should delete the email, block her, and never look back. This was the second chance I'd literally died for, a chance to avoid her, to live a life free of her insidious influence. But another part, a smaller, more insidious voice, whispered, "What if she's different now? What if you're stronger? Maybe this is closure." By morning, bleary-eyed and running on fumes and too much coffee, I caved. Against every instinct honed by years of pain, I typed out a reply. Simple, non-committal. "Yes, that was me. How have you been?" I hit send before I could second-guess myself, a knot of dread and anticipation tightening in my stomach. At the Codeweaver office, the Innovatech pitch was a disaster, at least on my end. My mind was miles away, replaying my brief interaction with Olivia, imagining her response to my email. Marcus, bless his perceptive soul, covered from my fumbling explanations and distracted silences. He shot me concerned glances throughout the meeting, but professionally, he was a rock. "Okay, spill," he said the moment the clients were out the door, his arms crossed. "You were about as present as a dial-up modem in a gigabit world. What the hell is going on with you, Ethan?" I wanted to tell him. I really did. Marcus was more than a business partner, he was a friend. But how could I explain? "Hey, Marcus, I died a few years ago because of this girl, and now I'm reliving my life, and I just saw her again and she's emailed me." He'd have me committed. "Just personal stuff," I mumbled, running a hand through my hair. "Sleepless night. Won't happen again." He didn't look convinced. This personal stuff wouldn't happen to have auburn hair and a smile that could charm the pants off a snowman, would it? "I saw you through the window at Westlake yesterday when I was grabbing my latte. You looked like you'd seen a banshee." I froze. He'd seen me. He'd seen her. "It's complicated," I finally admitted. "Complicated usually means trouble, my friend. Especially when it involves someone who makes you look like that." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Just be careful, all right? We've got too much good stuff happening to let it get derailed." Olivia's reply pinged into my inbox later that afternoon. "I've been good. Busy with work. Photography is taking off. I'd love to catch up properly. Coffee sometime. My treat." Below her signature was a link to her online portfolio. Hesitantly, I clicked. The images were breathtaking. Powerful portraits, evocative landscapes, a keen eye for light and shadow. This was the artist she'd always claimed she wanted to be, the one she'd used as an excuse for so much of her behavior in our past life. Here, in this timeline, without me to drag down or manipulate, she'd actually achieved it. Traveled the world, won awards, had exhibitions. A pang of something I couldn't quite name. Jealousy? Regret? Twisted inside me. This was the life she'd built while I was recovering from the life she'd destroyed. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't Marcus, someone who wouldn't immediately think I was losing my mind. Alex. My oldest friend in this timeline, a laid-back graphic designer who'd seen me through some rough patches after my rebirth. The inexplicable grief and disorientation I couldn't explain. I called him, keeping the rebirth part, as always, to myself. "Hey man, got a weird situation," I began, settling onto my couch. "Lay it on me," Alex said, his voice calm and steadying. I ran into someone who reminds me a lot of a person who really broke me a long time ago. Like an uncanny resemblance. Same name, everything." "Oof, that's rough. Deja vu city." "Yeah, and now she wants to meet for coffee." Alex was quiet for a moment. "So what's the dilemma? Don't go—" I know, but there's this, I don't know, this feeling like maybe I should, just to see, to prove to myself that I'm over it, that she, or this version of her, has no power over me anymore." "Ah, the classic closure trap," Alex said knowingly. "Look, Ethan, sometimes the universe throws these curveballs at us. Maybe it is a closure opportunity. Or maybe it's a chance to walk away clean, knowing you've learned your lesson. Just be careful, okay? Don't go in expecting a different person if the pattern feels familiar. People rarely change that much. Hours of deliberation, pacing, more coffee. Olivia's portfolio images burned into my retinas. Finally, I typed out another reply, my heart thudding a nervous rhythm. Coffee sounds good. How about the Art Museum Cafe? Saturday, say 2 p.m.? A public place, neutral ground, and perhaps fittingly, a place surrounded by art, her domain. I was telling myself it was to prove I was over her. But a small, treacherous part of me wondered if Alex was right. Maybe, just maybe, this was a test. And maybe this time I was strong enough to pass. The journal entries from the 3rd year of my relationship with Olivia in my previous life were a dark, twisted landscape. My world had shrunk, constricting until it revolved entirely around her moods, her needs, her dramas. My friends had drifted away, tired of my constant cancellations, my Olivia-centric conversations. My family called less and less, our conversations strained by my defensiveness of her. I was isolated, and that's exactly where she wanted me. I remember one weekend she'd said she was going to a women's art retreat in the mountains. No phones allowed, total digital detox, she'd announced brightly. I'd felt a pang of unease. Julian Vance was rumored to have a cabin up there, but I'd pushed it down. Trust her, I'd told myself. She said she's changed. Then, a mutual acquaintance had innocently tagged Olivia in a photo on social media. At a beach party, miles from any mountains, Julian's arm slung casually around her shoulders. The lie was so blatant, so careless. When I confronted her, my voice shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she'd crumpled. Hysterics, tears, accusations that I was trying to control her, to suffocate her. And then the chilling threat, whispered through sobs, "If you keep pushing me like this, Ethan, I don't know what I'll do. I can't handle this pressure. I might hurt myself." My anger evaporated, replaced by a sickening fear. I'd backed down immediately, apologizing for upsetting her, for questioning her. The gaslighting was so effective, I actually ended up feeling guilty. My therapist back then, Dr. Evans, a kind, patient woman, had tried to gently pry my eyes open. I'd started seeing her after a particularly bad depressive episode, one Olivia had expertly blamed on my inherent negativity. "Ethan," Dr. Evans had said, her gaze steady, "the patterns you're describing, the intense emotional highs and lows, the constant need for validation, the way your partner reacts to any questioning of her behavior, these are often indicative of an emotionally abusive dynamic." I'd bristled. "No, you don't understand. Olivia she's special. She's been through so much. When things are good, they're incredible. No one makes me feel the way she does." "And when things are bad?" Dr. Evans had pressed gently. I had no answer for that, beyond the hollow echo of my own diminishing self-worth. Around that time, Olivia had dropped out of art school. "The structure is stifling my creativity," she'd announced. "I need to be free to create on my own terms." Which, in practice, meant she produced very little art and spent most of her days finding inspiration, while I worked 2 dead-end jobs to keep us afloat. A barista in the mornings, a data entry clerk in the afternoons. The irony wasn't lost on me. The promising computer science student, now barely making rent, supporting his girlfriend's artistic journey. Her financial dependence on me grew, another chain binding me to her. She was my responsibility. I had to take care of her. That's what love was, wasn't it? Back in my present, 2023, I stood in front of my closet, preparing for my meeting with the Olivia of this timeline. I consciously chose an outfit that screamed success and confidence. A well-tailored dark blazer, a crisp button-down shirt, expensive jeans. Nothing like the worn-out t-shirts and faded hoodies of the Ethan who had been slowly drowning in that other life. This was a different Ethan, a stronger Ethan, an Ethan who wouldn't be so easily fooled. I had to believe that. I arrived at the Seattle Art Museum Cafe a good 20 minutes early. My palms were sweating. I chose a small table near the back, one with a clear view of the entrance and, more importantly, a clear path to the exit. I mentally rehearsed a few opening lines, a few polite inquiries, a few non-committal responses. Keep it light, keep it brief, establish that you're doing great, then leave. That was the plan. She walked in at precisely 2 p.m., and for a heart-stopping moment, it was like seeing a ghost from a nightmare, yet so undeniably real. She was more poised now, more polished than the bohemian girl I remembered. Her auburn hair was styled in loose, sophisticated waves, and she wore a chic, understated dress that probably cost more than my first car. But the energy around her, that magnetic, almost palpable hum, it was exactly the same. And her smile, when she spotted me and waved, still reached her eyes in that way that had once made me feel like I was the only person in the universe. My carefully constructed defenses wobbled. "Ethan? Ethan Parker?" she said, her voice a smooth melody that sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. She extended a hand, her grip firm, professional. "Olivia Reed," I replied, keeping my own voice as steady as possible. "Good to see you again, or, well, for the first time technically, in a while." She laughed, a light, airy sound. "Right? It's so strange. When I saw you at the coffee shop, I knew you from somewhere, but I just couldn't place it. Did we go to UW around the same time?" In this timeline, we hadn't. I'd stuck with computer science. She'd presumably gone straight into art. Our paths had never crossed in college. "No, I don't think so," I said. "Different programs, I guess." "Huh. Weird. Well, maybe we just passed each other in another life," she joked, taking a sip of the water the server had brought. I nearly choked on my own. The irony. Oh, the bitter irony. "Maybe," I managed, forcing a tight smile. She launched into a monologue about her photography career, her recent travels for a shoot in Patagonia, an upcoming exhibition she was incredibly excited about. She mentioned a recent breakup, a musician who just didn't get her artistic temperament. The conversation was pleasant on the surface, all smiles and polite nods. But I was on high alert, a detective searching for clues, for the tells I knew so well. I listened more than I spoke, keeping my own contributions vague and success-oriented. My company was doing well. I was busy. I was happy. All true, yet all a carefully constructed facade for this particular encounter. I was trying to project an image of someone untouched by her, someone who had never been broken by someone like her. And as she talked, the old patterns began to emerge, subtle at first, then more obvious to my sensitized eyes. The way she'd steer the conversation back to herself, no matter the topic. The little, almost imperceptible, fishing for compliments. This new series is so draining, I just hope people connect with it. The light, fleeting touches on my arm when she was making a point. A gesture that had once felt intimate and now felt invasively familiar. The way her eyes would flick to my face, gauging my reaction, assessing my engagement. The charm was still there, potent and practiced. But this time I could see the mechanics behind it, the puppeteer pulling the strings. It was like watching a magician perform a trick when you already knew the secret. The illusion was gone. The museum cafe, with its polite chatter and clinking cups, faded away, replaced by the stark, painful memories from my journal. Previous life, year 4. Things had, for a brief period, seemed to be looking up for me. Despite my incomplete degree, I'd managed to land a junior coding job at a small startup. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a lifeline. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of my old self, a sense of accomplishment, a sliver of self-worth that wasn't tied to Olivia's approval. I was naive enough to believe this positive shift could extend to our relationship. I thought that if I could just offer her more stability, more security, maybe the storms would finally pass. So I started planning to propose. Marriage, I'd convinced myself, would be the anchor we needed. It would prove my commitment, calm her insecurities, and finally usher in the peace I so desperately craved. I spent months squirreling away money from my meager salary, dreaming of the perfect ring, the perfect moment. All the while, Olivia was growing increasingly distant, more irritable, spending more and more nights crashing at a friend's place because our tiny apartment was too stifling for her creative process. The discovery, when it came, wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was a quiet, sickening lurch in my stomach as I stumbled across a hidden folder on our shared laptop. A folder filled with emails, photos, hotel reservations, Olivia and Julian Vance. Not just a flirtation, not just an emotional affair, a full-blown relationship for over 2 years. 2 years of lies, of gaslighting, of me pouring my heart and soul into a woman who was systematically betraying me with the very man I'd initially, and correctly, been suspicious of. And the cruelest cut? The money. The money I'd worked myself to the bone for, the money I'd given her for art supplies and studio fees, had been funding their romantic getaways, their fancy dinners, their life together. The confrontation that followed was the ugliest moment of my life. I laid out the evidence, my voice surprisingly calm, devoid of the hysteria she usually elicited. At first, she denied it, blatantly. "You're crazy, Ethan. You're imagining things. Julian is just a mentor, a friend." But the proof was irrefutable. When she finally realized she couldn't lie her way out of it, her demeanor shifted. She didn't apologize. She didn't show remorse. Instead, she attacked. "Fine," she'd spat, her eyes blazing with a cold fire I'd never seen before. "Yes, Julian and I are together. And you want to know why, Ethan? Because he sees me. He appreciates me. He's not like you." "Not like me," I'd whispered, the floor tilting beneath my feet. "You drove me to it," she'd screamed. "You were always so needy, so clingy, so emotionally unavailable when I actually needed you. You smothered me." When I didn't immediately crumble, when I didn't accept her twisted narrative, she became even crueler. Her words were like shards of glass, aimed to inflict maximum damage. "You were always just too boring, Ethan. Too predictable. Too safe. I needed passion, excitement, something you could never give me." Too safe. The ultimate insult from the woman who had systematically dismantled every safe harbor in my life. The aftermath was a swift, brutal descent. She left that night, moving in with Julian immediately. I was left in the ruins of our apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of her laughter, her promises, her lies. The support systems I should have had. Friends, family, I had alienated them all in my devotion to her. I was alone. And her final words, her assessment of my worthlessness echoed in the suffocating silence. Too needy, too boring, too safe. I believed her. I saw no way forward. The darkness closed in, absolute and terrifying. Back in the present, the coffee at the museum cafe had long gone cold. After that first meeting, Olivia and I started texting. Occasionally at first, then with increasing frequency. I told myself it was fine. I was in control. This was, as I'd flippantly called it to myself, exposure therapy. I was proving I could interact with her, this new Olivia, without falling apart, without falling back into old patterns. But a small, insidious part of me was drawn to the familiar dance, the witty banter, the subtle flirtation. She invited me to her photography exhibition opening. "It would mean a lot to have you there, Ethan," she'd texted, followed by a string of carefully chosen emojis designed to convey warmth and a hint of vulnerability. I declined, politely. "Work is crazy right now," I'd lied, but I sent her a congratulatory message on the day. Her reply came almost instantly. "Thanks, Ethan. You get it. You're different from most guys. I feel like you really see me." That phrase, "you really see me." It was one of her old lines, a classic from her manipulation playbook. A chill ran down my spine, but I pushed it away. She was just being nice. This timeline was different. Meanwhile, Codeweaver Solutions was soaring. Marcus and I landed the Innovatech contract, our biggest client to date. The team celebrated with champagne and overly ambitious talk of future expansion. I should have been ecstatic, fully present in my success. But I found myself checking my phone every few minutes, a nervous flutter in my chest whenever a new message alert popped up, half hoping, half dreading it would be from her. Alex, ever observant, picked up on my distraction. We were grabbing a beer after work, and I'd been unusually quiet, my gaze drifting to my phone more than once. "So, this Olivia Napomenanie," he began, using the Russian word for reminder, a private joke between us for things that dredged up the past. "Still in the picture?" "We text sometimes," I admitted, trying to sound casual. "She's interesting, successful, different from how I imagined." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Ethan, be honest with yourself. You've been down this road before, just with a different name and face attached to the chaos. Are you sure you're not just kidding yourself that this is different because you want it to be?" "No, it is different," I insisted, maybe a little too forcefully. "Because I'm different. I know the warning signs now. I know when to walk away." "Famous last words," Alex muttered into his beer. The real alarm bell, the one that even I couldn't ignore, rang a few days later. I was in my office, deep in a coding problem, when my assistant buzzed through. "Ethan, there's an Olivia Reed here to see you. She says you're expecting her, but she's not on your calendar." My blood ran cold. I hadn't told her where I worked. I walked out to the reception area, and there she was, holding 2 coffees, a bright, apologetic smile on her face. "Surprise," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I was in the neighborhood, and I remembered you mentioning you worked downtown, so I did a little Googling. Hope you don't mind. I brought caffeine." Her charm offensive was in full swing. My colleagues, peeking curiously from their desks, were clearly captivated. But all I felt was a surge of adrenaline, a fight-or-flight response kicking in. She had found my office. She had shown up unannounced. She had crossed a boundary. It was classic Olivia behavior, a subtle power play disguised as a thoughtful gesture. Marcus caught my eye from across the open-plan office, his expression unreadable, but conveying a silent warning. The déjà vu was so strong it almost buckled my knees. The memory of Olivia showing up at my office in this timeline threw me back into the vortex of my previous life's final, agonizing months. 6 months after the breakup. I was a wreck, barely functioning. Then I heard through the grapevine, the small, interconnected world of the art scene Olivia had inhabited, that she and Julian were engaged. The news hit me like a physical blow. Engaged to him. The man she'd cheated on me with. The man she'd sworn was just a friend. I started driving past their apartment, a neat little brownstone Julian owned. Again and again, I don't even know what I was looking for. A glimpse of her? A sign that she was miserable? I was becoming unhinged, a ghost haunting the periphery of her new, happy life. In a moment of sheer desperation, I'd composed a long, rambling email. Pages and pages poured out of me. Our history, the good times, My undying love, my confusion, my pain. I begged her to explain, to talk to me, to give me some reason, any reason that made sense of the wreckage she'd left behind. Her reply was swift, cold, and utterly dismissive. "Ethan, please move on. What we had wasn't real love. I was young. I was experimenting. You need to let go and find someone else. I'm happy now. Please respect that." Not real. Experimenting. Each word was a fresh stab to my already bleeding heart. She had rewritten our entire history, erased my significance, reduced our years together to a youthful folly. That email was the final nail in the coffin of my will to live. If what we'd had wasn't real, then what was? If she, the person I had loved more than life itself, could dismiss me so easily, then what value did I have? Convinced I was worthless, unlovable, a cosmic mistake, I started to plan my exit. Meticulously. I wrote letters. One to my parents, full of apologies and self-blame for not being the son they deserved. And one to Olivia. In it, I didn't rage. I didn't accuse. I just told her I was sorry I hadn't been enough. Sorry I couldn't be the man she needed. I took all the blame, all the shame, onto myself. The last day. I remember cleaning my tiny, depressing apartment with a strange sense of calm. I deleted all my social media accounts, severing the last flimsy ties to a world I no longer felt a part of. Then, I sat on the worn couch, a bottle of cheap whiskey in one hand, a bottle of sleeping pills in the other. My last clear thought, before the darkness started to claim me, before the pills and alcohol dragged me under, I remember scratching it onto the back of her letter, the one I would never send. If I could do it all again, I'd walk away before she could hurt me. I'd just walk away. I woke up in my present-day bed, gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat. The nightmare, so vivid, so real, still clung to me. My heart was pounding. It took me a moment to orient myself. 2023. My apartment. My life. My second chance. And the words from my dream, my final dying wish from that other existence echoed in my mind. If I could do it all again, I'd walk away before she could hurt me. I sat up, a profound realization washing over me. The universe, in its own twisted, inexplicable way, had granted my wish. I was doing it all again. And this time I had the chance to make a different choice. The chance to walk away. Despite the blaring red flags, despite the nightmares, despite every rational cell in my body screaming at me to run, I found myself agreeing to attend Olivia's photography exhibition opening. She'd been persistent, a series of charmingly worded texts and a voicemail laced with just the right amount of faux disappointment at my initial hesitation. "It just won't be the same without you there, Ethan. I really value your eye." My eye. Right. I told myself I was going for a specific reason. To see her in her element, the acclaimed artist. To witness her success in this timeline, a success achieved, presumably, without my unwitting financial and emotional backing. This would be it, I reasoned. The final closure. I would see her shine, be politely impressed, and then fade back into my own separate, healthy life. The gallery was packed. A chic, artsy crowd buzzed with wine-fueled conversations, their eyes darting between Olivia's stunning photographs and the artist herself. And Olivia, she was incandescent. She moved through the room like a queen holding court, a warm smile for everyone, a captivating anecdote, a perfectly timed laugh. Her talent was undeniable. The images lining the walls were powerful, beautiful, haunting. This wasn't the scattered, unproductive Olivia I'd known. This Olivia had focus, discipline, vision. A part of me felt a strange sort of pride, quickly quashed by the memory of what her art had cost me in another life. She spotted me almost immediately, her smile widening, She glided over, taking my arm. "Ethan, you made it! I'm so glad." She introduced me to a circle of her friends, gallery owners, critics, fellow artists, as Ethan Parker, someone very special, an old acquaintance I've recently reconnected with. The way she said, "very special," the possessive squeeze on my arm, the way her eyes kept flicking to mine, it was all designed to signal something more. Later, after a group of her former flames, she'd pointed them out with a dismissive wave earlier. "Oh, them! Ancient history, darling. None of them ever really got me," had drifted away. She pulled me aside, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They never understood me, Ethan. Not really. Not like you do. And we barely even know each other in this life. It's uncanny, isn't it?" After the exhibition wound down, the last of the guests trickling out, Olivia turned to me, her eyes bright. "Let me buy you dinner. To thank you for coming. There's this amazing little Italian place just around the corner, super private. My internal alarms were deafening. Abort mission, eject, eject." But I found myself nodding. "Okay, dinner sounds good." Like a lamb to the slaughter, I thought grimly. The restaurant was intimate, candle-lit, exactly the kind of place designed for romantic tête-à-têtes. The conversation flowed easily, Olivia doing most of the talking, recounting amusing anecdotes from her travels, subtly fishing for compliments about her exhibition. Then, under the table, her foot brushed against mine. A light, lingering touch. Exactly like our first official date in my previous life, in that little bistro near campus. A jolt, not entirely unpleasant, shot up my leg. She was good, so damn good. Then came the moment. We were leaning back, a comfortable silence having fallen between us after the plates were cleared. She looked at me, her green eyes soft and luminous in the candlelight. "Ethan," she murmured, her voice husky. "There's something between us. I felt it the moment I saw you in that coffee shop. A connection. Don't you feel it?" She leaned in, her gaze fixed on my lips. This was it, the culmination of her carefully orchestrated campaign. For a fleeting, terrifying second, I was tempted. The pull of her, the familiar, intoxicating chemistry was still there, a ghost of its former power. Could things be different this time? Had she changed? Had I changed enough to navigate this? To have a different outcome? And then I saw it. Just for a nanosecond, before her expression softened into one of longing, I saw it in her eyes. A flicker. A tiny, almost imperceptible shift. The same calculating, assessing look she'd had right before she reeled me in with a lie, right before she manipulated a situation to her advantage. The look of a predator sizing up its prey. And in that instant, everything became crystal clear. My hand came up gently before her lips could meet mine. "I can't do this, Olivia." The words were quiet, but firm. Her eyes, which had been soft and inviting, sharpened. The surprise was genuine, I think. Rejection wasn't something she was used to, especially not when she'd deployed her full arsenal of charm. Then, as the surprise faded, something harder, colder, flickered in their depths. It was a look I knew all too well, the precursor to a storm, the subtle shift before the emotional manipulation began. "What?" Her voice was a little too bright, a little too brittle. "What do you mean you can't do this? I thought we had a connection. You've been leading me on, Ethan, haven't you?" There it was. The script, the immediate deflection, the accusation, the attempt to make me the bad guy. In my previous life, this would have been my cue to apologize, to backpedal, to reassure her. My stomach would be churning with anxiety, desperate to fix whatever I'd supposedly broken. But this wasn't my previous life. "No, Olivia," I said, my voice calm, even. "I've been friendly. There's a difference." I watched, almost clinically, as her expression cycled through a series of well-worn tactics. First, hurt. Her lower lip trembled slightly, her eyes glistening. When that didn't elicit the desired response, a flash of anger, her jaw tightened, her eyes narrowed. Then, a quick switch back to charm, a dazzling smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, Ethan, don't be like that. We were having such a lovely time." And when that, too, failed, a flicker of raw vulnerability, her voice dropping to a wounded whisper. "I don't understand. I thought you liked me." It was a masterful performance, honed over years, perhaps lifetimes. But this time the audience wasn't buying it. I remained unmoved, my gaze steady. She made one last attempt, her voice laced with that uncanny, almost mystical quality she could summon. "I've never met anyone who understands me like you do, Ethan. It's like we've known each other in another life or something." The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. I allowed myself a small, sad smile. "Maybe we have," I said softly. I signaled for the check. When it arrived, I placed my card down. "You're incredibly talented, Olivia," I said, meeting her confused, angry gaze. "And you're beautiful. You'll have no trouble finding someone else to appreciate all of that." I stood up. "But I know exactly who I am now, and I know what I deserve. This isn't it." I turned and walked out of the restaurant. Each step away from her, away from that table, away from the suffocating weight of the past, felt lighter than the last. The cool night air hit my face, and I breathed it in, deep and clean. It was the breath of freedom. The weight of my previous life, the one she had so thoroughly dominated, was finally, truly lifting. The days that followed were a predictable onslaught. Olivia didn't give up easily, she never had. My phone became a battleground. Texts pinged in at all hours. First apologetic. "I'm so sorry if I misread things, Ethan. I was just so caught up in the moment." Then angry. "How could you just walk out like that after everything? You're a coward." Then seductive. "I can't stop thinking about you. We have something special. I know it. Give us a chance." Then concerned. "Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Please just let me know you're all right." It was the full spectrum. A desperate, chaotic barrage of manipulation tactics I recognized with a chilling clarity. This time, however, I didn't engage. I didn't reply. I didn't explain or defend myself. I simply blocked her number. When the messages started coming through on various social media platforms, I blocked her there too, methodically, unemotionally. Then came the emails, from new, unfamiliar addresses. I set up a filter, consigning them directly to the trash, unread. The silence on my end was absolute. A week later, she showed up at my office again. Not with coffee this time, but with a stormy expression and a demand to speak to me. Marcus, who had witnessed the first uninvited visit, intercepted her in the reception area. I heard raised voices, Olivia's initially charming, then increasingly strident. Marcus, calm but firm, eventually had to call building security to escort her out. Later that day, he walked into my office and closed the door. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, a wry expression on his face. "Dodged a bullet there, huh, buddy?" I let out a long, shaky breath. "Marcus, you have no idea. No idea at all." And for the first time, I told him. Not the rebirth part, not the dying part, but I told him about a woman from my past. A woman who looked and acted uncannily like Olivia Reed, a woman who had systematically dismantled my life with the exact same tactics. I told him about the manipulation, the gaslighting, the emotional devastation. He listened, his expression growing more serious with every word. "Damn, Ethan," he said when I'd finished. "That's heavy. I'm glad you got away from this one then. And the other one, eventually." "Me too," I said. a wave of profound relief washing over me. Me too. The encounter, the whole strange, unsettling convergence of timelines, had stirred up a lot of old ghosts. I decided it was time to talk to someone professional again. I found a therapist, a pragmatic, no-nonsense woman named Dr. Albright. I didn't tell her about the rebirth, of course. I framed it as an incredibly intense and damaging past relationship, and the uncanny experience of meeting someone who seemed to be a carbon copy of that destructive ex. We worked through the lingering trauma, the echoes of self-doubt, the residual fear. She helped me see the Olivia encounter not as a threat, but as an opportunity, a chance to put my hard-won lessons into practice, to prove to myself that I had truly broken the cycle. A few weeks later, I found myself walking past Westlake Coffee. It was a sunny Saturday morning, the kind that usually drew a crowd. This time, I didn't hesitate at the door. I didn't scan the room with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I walked in, ordered my usual dark roast, and sat by the window, watching the world go by. She wasn't there, and for the first time, the thought of her, the possibility of her presence, didn't send a jolt of fear or pain through me. It was just a thought, a memory. The hold she'd had on me across 2 lifetimes was finally, irrevocably broken. 6 months passed. Life settled into a new, more vibrant rhythm. Codeweaver Solutions launched its flagship security software, Aegis Shield, to critical acclaim and a flood of new contracts. My confidence, both professionally and personally, blossomed. Without the constant drain of Olivia's drama or the subconscious fear of her reappearance, my creativity and focus were at an all-time high. I was fully present in this life, building something real, something mine. I heard through the city's vague network of mutual acquaintances. The art world and tech scene sometimes overlapped in surprising ways, that Olivia Reed had left Seattle. Apparently, her exhibition, while critically praised, hadn't translated into the kind of sales or patronage she'd expected. She'd packed up and moved on, chasing a new opportunity, a new audience in New York. It was a pattern I recognized. When her charm and manipulation failed to secure what she wanted, she cut her losses and sought fresh ground, new people to enchant. I felt nothing at the news, not relief, not vindication, just a distant, clinical observation. Then I met Jamie. She was a brilliant freelance software engineer who Marcus had contracted for a specialized project with Aegis Shield. Our first meeting was a brainstorming session that ran late into the evening, fueled by pizza and a shared passion for elegant code. Our connection was easy, natural, balanced. There were no fireworks, no intense, all-consuming chemistry that left me breathless and disoriented. Instead, there was respect, humor, and a comfortable sense of intellectual kinship. It was so different from the volatile, addictive pull I'd once mistaken for love with Olivia. This felt healthy, real. On our third date, a walk along Alki Beach with the Seattle skyline glittering across the water, Jamie asked me about my past relationships. It was a standard getting-to-know-you question, but for me, it was loaded. I hesitated for a moment, watching the ferries glide across the Sound. Then I took a breath and answered with a truth that was both literal and metaphorical. I spent a lot of years giving myself away to someone who couldn't really love me back. Not in a healthy way. Someone who took everything and gave very little in return. It was a really damaging experience. I paused, then added with a wry smile. Honestly, it took dying and coming back to finally learn my worth and figure out what I actually wanted. Jamie laughed, a warm, genuine sound. Dying and coming back, huh? That's quite the metaphor. Sounds like you went through a hell of a breakup. I just smiled. If only she knew. but her easy acceptance of my metaphor was reassuring. She wasn't prying, wasn't dissecting. She was just listening. That night, back in my apartment, I took out the old leather-bound journal, the one that held the ghosts of Ethan Parker, version 1.0. I opened it to the last entry, the one I'd made after walking away from Olivia at the restaurant. I wrote for a long time, detailing the aftermath, the therapy, meeting Jamie, the sense of peace that had finally settled over me. I wrote about the strange, profound gift of a second chance and the unexpected way it had unfolded. When I was finished, I read it all through one last time. Then I closed the book. I found an old shoebox in the back of my closet, placed the journal inside, and pushed it onto the top shelf. I didn't need to revisit those memories anymore. They were a part of me, yes, but they no longer defined me. The last line I'd written, before closing the journal for good, read, "Some second chances aren't about trying to fix what was broken with the same flawed pieces. They're about walking away from the wreckage and having the courage to build something new, something better, something whole." The view from our new house was spectacular. Perched on a hill in Queen Anne, the living room's expansive windows offered a panoramic vista of the Seattle skyline, the Space Needle a proud exclamation point against the backdrop of Elliott Bay. Jamie and I had closed on it last week, a beautiful modern place with clean lines and plenty of light, a far cry from the cramped, dark apartments of my past. It felt symbolic, this house, a testament to the new life, the new perspective I'd gained. We were surrounded by boxes, the happy chaos of moving day. Jamie, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, a smudge of dust on her cheek, unearthed a familiar shoebox from a carton labeled Ethan Misk. "What's this old thing?" she asked, shaking it gently. "Feels like a book." I paused, a half-unpacked box of kitchen gadgets in my hands. My heart gave a little squeeze. The journal. I'd almost forgotten about it. "That," I said, walking over to her, "is my previous life." She looked at me, her brow furrowed in curiosity. "Your previous life? Is this another one of your dramatic metaphors, Parker?" she teased, her eyes smiling. I took a deep breath. We'd been together for 2 years. Our relationship was built on honesty, trust, and a deep, unwavering affection. If I couldn't tell her, who could I tell? "Actually, no," I said quietly. "Not a metaphor this time." And so, sitting on the floor amidst the moving boxes, with the city lights beginning to twinkle into existence outside our window, I told her. Everything. The first life. Olivia. The despair. The choices. The end. Waking up at 18 with all those memories. Seeing Olivia again in the coffee shop. The whole impossible, unbelievable story. I expected disbelief. Maybe even a concerned suggestion that I see a specialist. To my utter astonishment, Jamie just listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't scoff, didn't look at me like I was crazy. When I finally finished, the story hanging in the air between us, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took my hand, her fingers lacing through mine. "Wow," she said softly. "That's a lot to carry, Ethan." She looked at me, her gaze clear and steady. "Whether it was a literal rebirth or some kind of incredibly vivid, elaborate coping mechanism your mind created to process extreme trauma, it doesn't really matter, does it?" I stared at her, speechless. "What matters," she continued, her grip tightening on my hand, "is that you went through something horrific, and you learned from it. You grew. You became the man you are today. The man I love." Tears welled in my eyes. Not tears of pain or sadness, but of an overwhelming, profound gratitude. She believed me, or rather she accepted my truth, whatever its nature. A few weeks later, my parents came to visit our new home. Our relationship in this timeline was so much healthier, so much closer. I'd never withdrawn from them, never built those walls Olivia had insisted upon. My mom, walking through the bright, airy rooms, paused by the window, looking out at the view. "You seem so at peace, Ethan," she said, her voice soft. "So much more than you were in your early 20s. You had such a turbulent time back then." I smiled, thinking of the turbulence she never knew, the storms I'd weathered in a life she couldn't remember. "I guess I just figured some things out, Mom." One evening, a few months after we'd settled in, I was working late on my laptop at the kitchen island. Jamie was sketching in a notebook beside me, occasionally asking for my opinion on a new design idea. A notification popped up on my screen. "A LinkedIn alert. Olivia Reed has viewed your company website." For a moment, I just stared at it. Olivia Reed. Back in Seattle, apparently. Or at least digitally scouting. A few years ago, that notification would have sent a jolt of anxiety, of dread through me. My heart would have hammered. My palms would have sweated. Now? Nothing. Not a flicker of fear. Not a twinge of anger. Not even curiosity. Just a distant, detached acknowledgement. And then, surprisingly, a quiet sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the hard-won lesson she had taught me across 2 lifetimes, the lesson of self-worth, the lesson of walking away. I closed the laptop. "Everything okay?" Jamie asked, looking up from her sketchbook. "Everything's perfect," I said, and I meant it. I stood up, stretched, and walked over to the window, looking out at the glittering city. Then I turned back to her, a genuine smile on my face. "Come on, let's go sit in the garden. The stars are out." She smiled back, her eyes full of warmth. "Lead the way." And together we walked out into the cool night air, into our present, into our future, leaving any and all versions of the past exactly where they belonged, behind me.